Hi everybody, it's your pal Drew Racy, and time for another deep dive into the Bronze Age. And Hero for Hire was one of those series that came out in the early 70s, or early mid 70s about that time, that actually stayed around through the 80s. Most books didn't last that long, but this series went to 125, even though the last 100 had Iron Fist as a headliner. So somehow this book stayed in print despite all the changes in creative teams. I mean, it's so many. I'm going to try and encapsulate it as best I can. I may have to do a 1 or 2, 3 part thing, and because it's just strap yourself in, baby. Character designed by John Romita, and if you look up his name, he's done so many magnificent characters. Like the Punisher and Wolverine, but he also did the Constrictor, who was like a Captain America foe, and all these really random ones. So, not random, you know what I mean. So, when they decided to go on with this, Archie Goodwin and Billy Graham, who are both working at Warren Publishing, they got snagged and to work at Marvel because it was better page rates and more creative freedom. At the time at Warren Publishing, Archie was getting a name, but Billy really he excelled on like Vampirella, Creepy, and Eerie. They're the gold standard of their magazines, and enough so that Jim Warren made him an art director for a time. But whatever it was, Marvel must have handed him something better, or maybe Jim Warren was a pain in the ass. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. But the reason I bring it up is Billy Graham is an African American. And it's interesting to see in 1973 or whatever this is that you see African American actually doing an African American related comic book, and good old George Tuska is there. You could count on him for fill-ins or Iron Man or a little of everything. He was just, when Kirby left, Tuska became that like 2.5 issues a month kind of guy, but not quite on the same level, of course. But in his own way, he did some really neat stuff. Just not as innovative as Kirby. But I still liked him a lot because he was good with a good knuckle duster. When they just raise hell and shit like that. And Billy Graham's inks are they're so welcome on this stuff, because if he's inked flat, and I won't say who, but there's some inkers that just traced, and everything would have the same texture, whether it's the faces or whether it's like the hair. That's very nicely involved, and the clothes, the folding in the clothes are different, and this cliff here is different. But if you look at straight Tuska pencils, he kind of does the same line work, so he needs a little boost. I mean, his style was totally different from the 50s. In the 50s, I'm talking too fast. In the 50s, he did like crime comics and stuff like that, and was really, really good at that. But I think it came down to a matter of needing money for page rates, and Marvel, superhero comics were where it's at. And here we have reached a major milestone. 2 comics in a row in the early Bronze Age done by the same creative team. Because, God, the thing that happened usually was, and I'm sorry for my goofy voice there for a second ago. I know I sounded annoying. Roy Thomas and Gil Kane, they started a lot of series like Warlock and other books, and they would hand them off. They'd do the first issue, beautiful. Second issue would be handed right to the new kids who didn't know from deadlines, didn't know from just a lot of like discipline. They just got handed these books. They're like, okay, you got to go on, and they're like, combination of stage fright and maybe a little youthful arrogance, I'll say. Okay, issue 3 now. We got the same team. Amazing. Yeah, that whole Roy and Gil thing. I love those guys, but I thought that was a really bad plan to just do first issue and dump it on somebody unproven. Well, here we got Billy Graham stepping out as his full artist, pencils and inks, as he had done over at Warren. I think he inked this series mostly for the speed factor. Because it is hard to do a monthly book. I did a monthly book for years, and you got to really leave a lot of your parts of your life aside, and it's a drag, but and you always feel like I'm not going to get another comic book if I don't keep going. And now, okay, issue. Oh, why am I feeling so confessional there? Come on, there. Issue 5 with Black Mariah. I love that character. I love the name. It's just so cool. Steve Englehart now. Okay, we got us a new writer. Still same great art team. And I really love that. That's such a great look. And I like how just because she's a person of size, as they say these days, she can still kick a lot of ass. Kind of like the Kingpin in a sense. Okay, number 6. Billy. I think Billy's been doing all the covers here since the first one. Now we got another change. Steve Englehart's still there. Billy Graham's still there. But you got Gary Conway, however he says his name. And Paul Rainman as Anchor. It's like, I hadn't heard of... Between 1966 and 72 or 73 when this came out, I don't know what Paul Rainman did. He did the MLJ line of heroes for Archie, which failed. But like here, this hair is really amateurish. I hate to say it. It's just really, really... It looks like something I've seen in... something I would have done like before I turned pro. You just got to learn to do nuance. And his stuff isn't made for nuance. And so it's a real bad combination with Tuska, who's more organic. And okay, and then we jump to this story you might remember from the Marvel Treasury Edition. It was the Christmas, or they called it the Holiday Grab Bag is what it was called. And you did have Steve and George and Billy on board again. So it's a great story. It's really, really great. And whoop, whoop, whoop. Almost there. I lost my place. Hang with me, everybody. Okay, issue 8. You got same 3 guys. That's cool. We're keeping up. We're trying to keep it steady. Steady as she goes, as I say. Dr. Doom, hey, he gets an upgrade in his villains big time. And parts of this you could tell are redrawn because Tuska could really never draw the Fantastic Four. That just wasn't his thing. He was better with the Avengers type characters. So anyway, Luke Cage is owed $200 from Dr. Doom. Chris on Comic Book Tropes, the site is Comic Book Tropes. He does a weekly blog about, not a video. He talks about this one in particular. It's so funny. He goes in great depth, but he brings up the infamous panel when my men reported a crazy black man in the Fantastic Four's craft. I knew it had to be you. Where's my money, honey? It's just so nuts. It's just crazy. But like I said, Chris does a whole episode on it. Just how insane the story is. I guess somebody just wanted to boost sales by dumping in some a high, we call a high visual character, I guess, or one of the best villains. This is Steve and George and Billy, and I love that. Look at all that juice that Billy's putting in there. It's just so. In fact, if I hadn't seen this, I might not have thought it was George. It looks like Billy kind of took over a little bit, which is okay. Love the underlighting there. Beautiful stuff. Now this came out before I was reading comics. I read them in Marvel Masterworks form, or when I went backwards in my collection to catch books that I was missing. I did eventually read these. I'm only saving this one because. I know I'm sounding hypocritical. You got another same team again, but just strap yourself in. That's clearly a paste up from Jim Mooney or somebody just because. Now this one here, you got Steve Englehart's script, Billy Graham complete art, pencils and inks. Really, really strong stuff. And down the road, Billy, in the late 70s or early 80s, he did a really good graphic novel with Don McGregor, a character called Saber, and it's really good stuff. Here we go. We got now we got Billy as co-scripter. That's pretty cool. Love it. I love the wispy lines. It really reminds me of the Bill Everett lines I showed you on the last Submariner episode I did. I just love the folds. He just does. Like I said, he's doing adding some script and trying to, I guess, educate the other guys how black people speak, I suppose. And co-scripter artist Isabella, co-scripter camp counselor Steve Englehart. He's either the editor or the plotter or something. Oh no, Roy's the editor. Okay. More goodness. Now, shake hands with Stiletto. Billy Graham, penciling, just penciling's time. And Frank McLaughlin is the inker. I love Frank McLaughlin, but I don't think it matches up with George. I know it sounds like I'm bashing on George Tuska, but he's really one of my favorite Bronze Age artists because he did Iron Man and all that before, way before the movies when no people knew who he was. This was even before I even. Long story. This I'm surprised passed the Comics Code because it is. If you look at the depth, this is in the foreground and his head's not quite on there, but there's a thing in the 50s where. Dr. Wortham's Seduction of the Innocents. It's like one of the bad things they put in the Comics Code that was a no-no was injury to the eye motif, which was used on some of the EC comics and other horror comics. So I'm really shocked because that may be a tangent, but it looks like he's going to jab his eye. And that's usually a no-no. So we'll break down there. Okay. Let's see. Should I go on, everybody? Okay. You know what? I'm at 12, and I'll come right back.